Good evening. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. All right, I'm going to give everyone a few more minutes to join, so we'll start exactly at 6:02. Good evening for those who just joined. We'll be getting started in just 1 minute. All right, thank you all for joining us today for the Roswell Road Access Management Plan virtual public meeting. My name is Caitlin Schenkel. I am the project manager for this plan on behalf of the City of Sandy Springs. First off, thank you all for joining us virtually. We would have loved to have this meeting in person, but with the recent rise in COVID cases, we thought it'd be safer to go ahead and keep it virtual for now. We will have another public meeting later in the summer, and during that meeting, we're hoping to have that one in person. We'll dive into what access management means later in the presentation, but I do want to emphasize that this is a plan that will likely be implemented very gradually over time, typically with redevelopment and in conjunction with other public works projects. With that, we'll move on to a little housekeeping before we get into the content today. So this meeting is being recorded. All participants are muted during the meeting, but if you have a question or comment, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom center of your screen. If it's a technical question, like I can't have audio or things like that, we'll be able to reply to you directly during the presentation. But for all other content related questions, we'll hold until the end of the presentation. We'll also be using an interactive poll. Again, we can't do this in person, so we thought this would be a way to engage you all virtually. So we're going to go ahead and do a practice session first. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Nathan. All right, at the top of your screen, you'll see go to www.menti.com and use the code shown. You can either open a new tab on your browser, or you can use a mobile device such as a cell phone or a tablet. But please, everyone, go to www.menti.com and type in the code 39453911. And I'll give you all a few minutes to go there. We're going to start off with a practice question of just how you kind of interact with Roswell Road. So your options are: I live along Roswell Road, I work or I go to school along Roswell Road, or I shop along Roswell Road. And this is a little fun exercise where you can see in real time who's in the audience today. So again, I'll give you all a few minutes to get there. If you have any issues getting to menti.com, now is the time to enter into the Q&A chat, and we can try and help troubleshoot you right now. All right, give you all one more minute. Hopefully you're able to get to menti.com. And at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the number of people who participated. So we have 36 people who've responded to the poll. All right, great. I think you all got the hang of it. So we'll be doing more of these polls during the actual presentation. But with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Nathan Gomez. He is with Gresham Smith, and he has been leading the consultant side of things for this planning effort. Take it away, Nathan.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. Like Caitlin said, my name is Nathan Gomez. I'm with Gresham Smith, and I'm leading the Gresham Smith team for this plan. Again, I want to thank you all for your time today. Today, we'll be just discussing what this plan is about, some of the goals and objectives of this plan, and what we want to achieve through this plan at the end of the day. To set a baseline for our discussion today, we'll talk about some existing conditions along Roswell Road. We'll then look at some potential access management treatments as we are considering improvements based on some of the analysis that we are doing. Towards the end of this presentation, we'll also share an interactive map tool that we have developed specifically for this project to get the feedback from you all, and then we'll wrap it up with some next steps. And the main agenda for today is not just to present, but also answer some of the questions that you might have. So majority of the time we'll reserve towards the end of the meeting for that question and answers. In addition to listening from me and also from Caitlin at the city, you'll also hear from my colleague, Mega Young at Gresham Smith, and also Ansley Jones from Blue Cypress. Both of them are my team members as part of this plan. So let's start with an overview of this plan, the Roswell Road Access Management Plan. So first off, we need to look at what is access management. As a definition, we're looking at a coordinated planning, regulation, and design of access connections. The access connections between a roadway, in this case, Roswell Road, and the adjacent properties and parcels along the roadway. We do this so that we can improve safety and maintain an efficient operation of the roadway as intended. Every roadway has two roles to ensure safe mobility along that roadway, in addition to providing access to properties along the roadway. So we want to make sure that we manage that access in a way that the roadway can operate efficiently and also in a safe manner for all users of the road, of that roadway. So when we talk about access management, some of the sample treatments that we're looking at is consideration of a raised median, a median that goes along the roadway, and therefore median openings at strategic places to allow traffic movements. Limited and separated driveways, those connections to those parcels along the roadway, and consequently also looking at opportunities for consolidating those driveways or considering interparcel connections, so shared driveways for those parcels. And why do we do this? And that picture to the right shows an example of a roadway, where access hasn't been controlled or managed properly. And what can happen if that was the case? You can see a lot of those driveways in quick succession along that roadway, and you can imagine all those locations are potential areas where vehicles can legally cross and therefore present conflicts along the roadway. So that can automatically increase crashes along that facility, and leading to an inhospitable environment for users of this roadway. It could be pedestrians, bicyclists, or transit users, in addition to the motorists traveling up and down that roadway. And this leads to crashes, leads to traffic congestion, as we all know, and longer travel times. One study pointed out that crashes can almost contribute towards 25% of the congestion that we experience on any particular roadway. And congestion and longer travel times affect the economic productivity of the roadway and the surrounding areas, and make the roadway less functional and less livable for all the users in the area. We started on this plan back in late summer of last year, so August of 2021, and we expect to wrap up this plan in 2022, this year, towards early fall in October 2022. We can consider this plan in three phases. When we are actually in the first phase of this plan, existing conditions and data collection, where we look comprehensively at the number of crashes reported along the corridor, some of the traffic conditions at intersections and along the roadway, and also an assessment of all the driveways along the corridor. At which point we'll have the existing conditions informing us how the roadway is performing, and we'll be ready to move into evaluation and development of some of those alternatives to look at how we can improve the operation of the corridor. And finally, in the last phase, we'll be putting together this plan, which will contain lists of projects and an implementation plan. All this with a view of establishing that vision that the city has developed for Roswell Road through some of the adopted plans, such as the recently adopted transportation master plan, or previously adopted comprehensive plan, and where it looked at Roswell Road in a deep dive as part of the small area plan. So at the end of this plan, we'll have a list of projects which are ready to be moved forward, and with identifying funding. And some might be short term, some might be long term. But you might also see some other projects which the city has developed, which might actually include some access management treatments, just like we are considering as part of this plan. So that the blue bar at that top, which the arrow towards which shows from August 2021 all the way to October 2022, shows the timeline of this plan. And today we are at the first public meeting. We have several more opportunities to get that feedback. Today is that first important step of getting that feedback from you. All the analysis that we do, it cannot be completed unless we get that feedback. So today is that first important step for us. We have completed some stakeholder meetings back in fall of last year, and we plan to do more of that. And we have one more public meeting in June of 2022, approximately, where we will come back to you and present some of the ideas that we have developed, and again get that feedback from you. So let's move on to looking at some of the existing conditions that we have seen along Roswell Road based on our research. Roswell Road, as many of you know, is a principal arterial, or an important transportation facility up and down the city limits. It's 4 lanes throughout, with center turn lane most of the length, and turn lanes at major intersections. It carries a tremendous amount of traffic, approximately 25,000 to 33,000 vehicles per day, depending upon the location you're looking at. And that the graphic to the right shows all the shopping centers located along the roadway. You know, the corridor that we're looking at starts from Meadowbrook Drive at the southern limit of the city, and goes all the way to Dunwoody Place. And it serves a mix of land uses and the wide range of gamut: retail, restaurant, residential, schools, and government facilities. And you'll see that there is also a section of Roswell Road just north of Dunwoody Place, which is not part of this plan. That's because it is part of an ongoing project by the city. So this plan will, we are specifically looking at between Meadowbrook Drive at the southern city limit all the way up to Dunwoody Place. And because of this varied land uses, Roswell Road also serves a mix of travelers, and not only motorists, but then people who walk, use bike, or use transit. There's a couple of mortar routes serving the entire length of Roswell Road in the study area. The first thing that we are looking at is access spacing. So the spacing between those driveways. We have a lot of closely spaced driveways along Roswell Road. Like I mentioned before, they introduce conflict points. They're locations where vehicles can legally cross, and therefore can cause conflicts and introduce safety and operational deficiencies along the corridor, and can affect efficient operation of the corridor. Let's look at the access spacing along Roswell Road in 3 different segments. That picture to the right shows Roswell Road towards the north, near Dunwoody Place and just south of there. So that graphic shows Roswell Road and color coded in 3 different colors. The portions which are colored red are locations where we see the driveway spacing, or that access spacing is less than ideal conditions. And we are looking at Georgia DOT standards for measuring access spacing. So those locations where it is red are those where access spacing, or the driveway spacing, is below standards. And you can also see that picture to the bottom left. All those yellow circles identify the driveway locations near a signalized intersection, in this particular case at Hightower Trail and near Hope Road. So you can see all those driveway locations very near to a signalized intersection, at which place a lot of motorists, as they're navigating that signalized intersection, are going to have to pay attention to all these driveways. So the decisions that a motorist has to make as they're navigating a signalized intersection is tenfold because of all the closely spaced driveways. And for example, that graphic to the right shows some of those substandard sections of Highway 9 or Roswell Road near Dunwoody Place, near some of the main intersections such as Dalrymple or Pitts Road. And now if we go a little bit south to the central area of our corridor, this is between 285 and Abernathy. Again, we see some of those segments of Roswell Road where it is color coded red, where those access spacing is not ideal. It's much less than what Georgia DOT standards call for. Especially segments between 285 and Abernathy, we see it's majority of that is where we're not meeting those spacing requirements. And again, going south towards the south limit of the corridor, Again, we see several segments near Glenridge or near Windsor. Again, we are not meeting those access spacing criteria.
So now we would like to hear from you all. If you haven't already, please go to menti.com and enter the code 39453911. We would like to know what locations or destinations where you find it most difficult to turn into or out of along Roswell Road. So Nathan highlighted some of those places where we've seen in our analysis as driveways are close together, they're close to the side streets, which results in those difficult turning movements and makes it hard to get to where people want to go. So we're interested to know where is especially hard for you all to turn or get access to the places you need to go to along the corridor. You see some responses starting to come in here, like Abernathy. That's certainly a place where there are a lot of turning conflicts between Carpenter and Hammond, near 285, Grogan's Ferry, Roswell Road in Cliffwood West, near the lows near 285. As we just saw on that map, a lot of places close to 285 and just north of there do have those driveways that are very close together. The Prado and Lake Placid, which is right near there. Shopping centers, those are always a hot spot for conflicting turning movements, especially when they're near those signalized intersections. Chick-fil-A, we observed in our field review a lot of turning movements and conflicts just for folks trying to get in and out of Chick-fil-A. That's a popular place for sure. Kroger, Cromwell, and Chaseland. Again, a note about the public shopping center at Abernathy Road. Anything near 285, I would say that's definitely accurate. This is great. And just so you know, we will, this meeting is being recorded and we have a record of everyone's responses. So even if you don't see or scroll onto the screen, we're definitely collecting all that feedback. So thank you very much. We'll just give it maybe another few seconds here. Nathan, looks like folks are still submitting answers. Definitely consistency, I think, with a shopping centers. As Nathan showed you on that map, there are several shopping centers along Roswell Road, which is, of course, great for the business community and for having those amenities for everyone, but can be difficult to get in and out of, certainly. Great. Okay. I think we can go on, Nathan.
Okay. And like Megan said, don't worry if you weren't able to insert your comment at this point. We have another opportunity. We'll share the feedback tool, and all this will be recorded and shared with you all. So let's at this point, let's take a look at the second step of our existing conditions, the crash history. This is a very important piece of information that informs what alternatives and what improvements we need to consider as part of this corridor. We are looking at the historical reported crashes along Roswell Road, or 5 years between 2015 and 2019. There were about 5,543 reported crashes along the corridor. That is a very, very high number of crashes, and approximately that's about 2 crashes a day, throughout those 5-year period. And you can imagine how that can affect traffic operations along Roswell Road based on how much time it takes to clear and the property damage and other injuries and fatalities that these crashes could result in. A vast majority of these crashes just resulted in damages, property damages to your car or surrounding environment. But about 1 in 4, about 25%, resulted in at least an injury to one of the persons involved in that crash. And 29 of those were severe injuries. Those are life-altering or life-changing events. Furthermore, there was 11 crashes where a person died. Additionally, we observed that there were about 51 pedestrian crashes and also 10 bicycle crashes. And you can see the graphic on the right where some of those crashes were concentrated. We can again see some of the patterns emerging here. Those sections between Glenridge and Abernathy, and some of the intersections along here. It is also noteworthy to see that the crash rates and also the injury crash rate were nearly twice as high as similar facilities throughout the state. So when we are comparing similar facilities like Roswell Road, we see that the crash history and the crash rates along Roswell Road is twice as what we see in other places. Another piece of the information that we're looking at is left turn crashes. Left turn crashes are also really important for us to take a deep dive on, because they are really dangerous for pedestrians or bicyclists along Roswell Road. They often result in fatal or severe injury crashes, or has the propensity to cause more of those kind of crashes. You can imagine a left turn crash can cause those T-bone kind of crashes along the corridor. Again, within the 5,500 and more crashes that we observed, there were about 1,300 crashes which could be classified as left turn. When we are talking about left turn, it is a crash where at least one vehicle were attempting to make a left turn. That could be into a driveway or at an intersection or exiting out of a driveway. So these are crashes which are important to analyze and see what were the causes. And that graphic to the right shows that we observe left turn crashes all up and down the corridor. So it is important to look at this corridor as a whole and see how these kind of crashes can be addressed, and Roswell Road could be improved to address these kind of crashes. Just like left turn crashes, driveway crashes is another important piece of analysis that we are doing, looking at crashes where at least one vehicle was attempting to enter or leave a driveway along Roswell Road. Again, that graphic to the right shows where locations where we observed higher proportion of these driveway crashes, especially that segment between Hammond Drive and 285, also near intersections such as Abernathy, where it shows a higher propensity of these kind of crashes. And driveway crashes are also severe, and history shows that they resulted in 2 fatal crashes, 2 severe injury crashes, and I actually also was involved in one of the crashes that involved a pedestrian back in 2016. So in talking about improving the corridor, we want to make sure that Roswell Road is a place that is welcoming not only to motorists, but also people who choose to walk, bike, or use transit. So in that context, we are considering those users as vulnerable users, those who don't have a protection of a vehicle as they travel up and down Roswell Road. The elderly, children, or those with mobility challenges are also examples of a vulnerable user. And the graphic to the right shows why we pay attention to vulnerable users. The graphic shows that if a person is involved in a crash with a vehicle traveling at 20 miles an hour, that person might have a chance to survive, 90% chance of survival at 20 miles an hour, but at 40 miles an hour, you only have a 20% chance of survival. So it's really important to look at crashes and crash performance of a roadway from the lens of the users, such as pedestrians, bicyclists, or transit users. And when we're looking at a corridor from this angle, we're looking at sidewalks, availability of sidewalks, the width of the roadway, the concentration of driveways, the high concentration which can cause those conflicts for those pedestrian movements and bicyclists using the roadway, and also the distance between marked and safe crossings where as a pedestrian, I can cross Roswell Road. So in looking at the pedestrian crashes, we observed about 51 crashes over the past 5 years, and some of these crashes, 2 of them resulted in fatalities, 3 of them resulted in those serious injuries. Those 2 pictures that we took when we were doing our field review showed instances where there were some segments of Roswell Road where there wasn't continuous sidewalk facility or safe or available places to cross Roswell Road. So you do see pedestrians, because of their need to access locations where they need to go, making some dangerous maneuvers. And the graphic again to the right shows where these pedestrian crashes are bunched up, and those segments between Abernathy and Glenridge shows higher propensity for these pedestrian crashes to happen along Roswell Road. Similarly, we are also looking at bicycle crashes. There were about 10 crashes over the past 5 years, one that resulted in fatality and one that resulted in a serious injury. Again, that graphic shows the location of bicycle crashes. All this to show that the treatments that we are looking at Roswell Road needs to be comprehensive look at the entire length of the roadway, because it can happen at any location along the entire length of Roswell Road within the city.
So again, we would like to hear from you. If you haven't already, please go to menti.com and enter that code you see at the top of your screen, 3945-3911. And we would like to know what locations or destinations feel unsafe for you to access while driving, walking, or perhaps catching a bus along Roswell Road. So Nathan just highlighted some of those areas that we've seen from the crash history that are especially prone to crashes, but we would like to know, just when you're driving around up and down the corridor, where does it really not feel safe for you to turn or to walk, perhaps to bike or catch a bus. So we're starting to see some input here. That's great. So someone turning out of their townhome complex at Abernathy Road, near 285, Hammond, Cliftwood. So again, seeing those places where we did see the higher crash rates. In front of the North Fulton Annex. That's certainly one of those areas where you have a longer distance between crossings, especially. And I know we've observed some people crossing the road and putting themselves at risk. Pretty much the entire Roswell Road corridor. I think many would agree with that. Near the Prado, near the Lowe's again, which is just a little bit north of 285, where you see a lot of those turning movements and just lots of conflicting traffic. We see some more mention of Publix and Target. And there's a good comment there about biking, that the whole the length of Roswell Road feels unsafe. And then there's certainly areas where it does feel dangerous to walk. Near the Longhorn on the west side of the road. High Tower Trail, that's an area also where there's a lot of pedestrian activity, and again, limited opportunities to cross the road. I see some comments that the corridor as a whole is dangerous to drive, and whether it's because of conflicting turning movements or some areas with higher speeds. I think that's definitely an accurate assessment of what we've also seen in the data as well. Leaving the park at the big trees preserve over there towards the north side. Trying to access bus stops across the corridor, that's especially a concern. Again, for those vulnerable users that we just talked about. Gap between the ped crossings around Windsor Parkway. So yeah, this is a lot of great input. Just give it a few more seconds here. Great. Well, thank you so much. I think we can keep going, Nathan.
All right. So at this point, let's maybe look at some of the potential treatments that we are considering and we could consider to address some of the concerns that we have shared with you and some of the concerns that you shared with us and in some of the previous exercises. So when we are talking about access management treatments, we're considering raised medians, those medians that could be placed along Roswell Road, where and therefore median openings where we can then strategically have those turning movements happen. Raised medians also give the benefit of providing pedestrian refuges. So strategically identifying locations where pedestrians need to cross. Therefore, a raised median can also provide a pedestrian refuge. It can also help calm traffic, and it has shown that when you convert a roadway with a two-way left turn lane into a facility which has a raised median, we can see about a 23% reduction in overall crashes. Another kind of treatment is turn lanes. Those vehicles that might be wanting to access a adjacent property by making a right turn or a left turn, if we provide turn lanes, they can get outside of the through lane into those turn lanes, thereby doing their decelerations in order to access those properties in the turn lane. So again, reducing those chances of a rear end crash by a vehicle doing a sudden braking or stopping when they need to access a particular facility. Turn lanes also has the added benefit of improving the capacity of the intersection and therefore reducing delay. And overall better traffic flow and better travel time can be realized by adding turn lanes at the right places and the right intersections along a corridor. Several research has shown that installing left turn lanes, for example, at signalized intersections has the potential to reduce crashes by almost 19%. So it's a very very important treatment available for us to address some of the problems that we are observing along Roswell Road. A couple more is driveway consolidation. When we reduce the number of conflict points along the roadway, we can see that benefit of number of crashes reducing because we are reducing the available places for vehicles to cross. It can have the benefit of improving traffic flow. It can make the facilities just safer and more convenient. That picture at the bottom shows these kind of treatments already in place along Roswell Road. That location is actually by Roswell Road and Windsor, where the CVS actually shares a driveway with the adjacent parcel. So by reducing the number of access points for CVS pharmacy and using those shared driveways, you make the entire facility and the operation at that signalized intersection much safer. And again, some of the research and some of the proven measures that we can take and identified by organizations such as the Federal Highway, we've seen that reducing driveways can reduce crashes by up to 25 to 31%. Another treatment that we're looking at is mid-block pedestrian crossings. We mentioned that we want to make sure we make Roswell Road good for not only motorists but people walking along the corridor and therefore crossing Roswell Road also. So mid-block crossings are those locations where we have marked crosswalks, a lot of times associated with those signals. Like that, the picture at the bottom shows the location by Long Island Drive where there's a signal, push buttons available to call the signal on flashing signals, and also crosswalks. And these mid-block crossings, when associated with those pedestrian refuges, has the potential to reduce pedestrian crashes by more than 50%. So it's a very potent treatment available to us to help the access for pedestrians along Roswell Road.
So for our last Menti question, we would just like to know of the treatments that Nathan just discussed, what types of improvements are you most interested in seeing along Roswell Road? So this is just a quick kind of voting exercise, as to which of these that you think would have the greatest benefit and what you think would be good to see along the corridor. You should be getting those answers in just a second here. Sometimes it takes a minute to activate. And just to repeat, this is among this is just a sample of options that we're considering. We're in the process of developing those ideas now that we've nearly wrapped up our existing conditions analysis, and we'll start to work with the city to think about what really makes sense along the corridor. So you can see there, but votes are actually nearly even right now for all of these potential treatments. We have about 34 respondents. So nearly equal interest in the medians, the turn lanes, opportunities for driveway consolidation and interparcel connectivity. And like Nathan mentioned, those are already things that the city is actively working with for newer developments, and that will continue to be encouraged along Roswell Road as parcels do redevelop. Also good showing for mid-block pedestrian crossings. Those are definitely a benefit, and like Nathan mentioned, an important safety measure that really has a good potential to drastically reduce pedestrian crashes. So those are a great tool. So we'll just give it another few seconds here, Nathan. It looks like turn lanes is in the lead, but just ever so slightly. All right, great. I think we can keep on going. So we wanted to also take this opportunity to introduce you all to an interactive map tool that we're launching tonight to collect more specific feedback on safety and operational issues along Roswell Road. So we would like to know where it's difficult for you to access businesses, your neighborhood, your school, other places you go, where it's difficult to turn, where you frequently observe traffic congestion, and also where it's unsafe to walk along Roswell Road or across the corridor. So that's the URL at the top there takes you to the project website, which has a link to access the tool. And we have a QR code there also that you're welcome to scan now or will be available later after the presentation. And we are collecting input through February 7th. So if you'd like to go on right after this meeting to share your thoughts while they're fresh in your mind, you're welcome to do so. But if not, we encourage you to take some time and think through that, share this with your friends and neighbors, and we'd love to get your feedback. And just real quick before we jump into next steps and facilitate some questions and answers, my colleague Ansley is going to just show you all real quick how the tool works.
All right, great. So once you've navigated to the site that Mega was showing on the screen, you'll get to the page that I'm showing here. So you'll see that there's a pop-up that'll direct you to begin the activity, and it gives you a little overview of what we're doing today. So essentially, we're looking throughout the city of Sandy Springs at the Roswell Road corridor, as well as a few other corridors on the north end that Sandy Springs would also like to hear about, where you've observed safety or operational issues. So on this sidebar, you can see the main areas of interest: Roswell Road North, Roswell Road Central, Roswell Road South, and then those roads in the north end. We've made it really easy to navigate by clicking on the sidebar. You can get to the different sections of these road segments. And along the top banner, you'll see the types of things that we would like you to note on the map. So if you know of somewhere that's difficult to turn or somewhere that's unsafe to cross, you just go ahead and drag one of those onto the road where you've observed that issue. Now make sure you're dropping it within one of the red corridors. If you drop it outside, you'll get a message that says, sorry, comments cannot be made outside the corridors. So do make sure to zoom in enough that you can find where you're looking for. You can also use the magnifying glass up here to type in an address if you know exactly where you're trying to find. And if you're trying to locate how to translate this page, we do have that available as well. So if you prefer to take the survey in any other language, Google Translate is built in with many languages available. So if you know anybody that speaks another language and you'd like to direct them to use this tool, please let them know that that's a functionality on this page. So as I was describing before, it's real simple. You just drag and drop whichever marker you're trying to note. And then there's a short comment form for you to fill out. So just leave us a short comment on what you'd like to describe about that area. And then there are a few other fields that you can look at along, first name, last name, zip code. The only one that you actually are required to submit is zip code. But if you'd like to share your name and email, that'll help us add you to an outreach list and let you know about other public meetings or other project announcements along the way. There's also the ability to add a picture if you happen to have a picture of that location. Now that we are keeping this survey available for the next 2 weeks. So if you want to go out and get a picture and then fill out the survey, that's an option as well. So once you've added everything, you can just press add comment. You'll need to make sure you have filled out everything, as I said. Unsafe to turn here. You'll have to check the I agree to the terms and conditions, which you're welcome to review if you'd like. They're pretty standard. And then, leave your zip code and press submit, and you'll be good to go. So with that, happy survey taking. And if you're experiencing any technical issues with the tool, just let us know in the Q&A box and we'll help you troubleshoot. Back to you, Nathan.
Great, and I'll take it from here. Thank you, Nathan, Mega, and Ansley. That was all very informative and really hope to see people use this tool. So a little bit about next steps. Go ahead to the next slide. Again, first and foremost, please share your input on the online map. Like Ansley mentioned, the city is actually looking for input on a few safety studies, and so this project really is focused on Roswell Road, but there's some separate efforts that would like some feedback on some other corridors, and so that's why they're listed. So it's kind of a joint effort there. In terms of the project, we are finalizing the existing conditions analysis and report, and then based on that, we'll begin our development of the actual recommendations. And we do look forward to a public meeting in the summer of 2022, so just a few months away, where we'll present these recommendations. And again, we're really hoping that this will be in person. And again, those recommendations really are going to be something that we probably, as a city, implement gradually over time, and so likely with redevelopment and other public works projects. But with that, just want to say a big thank you to everyone. Again, I'm Caitlin Schenkel. feel free to contact me at saferoswellroad@sandyspringsga.gov. And stay tuned for project updates through the project website. So that URL listed right there. And the social pinpoint tool that we just walked through is also going to be linked there. So if you can't find it, always head back to the project website. Everything's listed there. And with that, I'll open up to Q&A.
All right. Well, to kick things off, one of the first questions we received tonight was who are the stakeholders that were mentioned on the PowerPoint earlier? So I'll let Mega take that question.
Yeah, certainly. So like Nathan mentioned, last fall we did start to engage some stakeholders in the process. So we virtually convened a few different groups. Those consisted of the business community or certain representatives of businesses along Roswell Road, major shopping centers, certain business owners that the city already had contacts with. And again, the idea here was that there are so many businesses along Roswell Road, it's hard to capture everyone in a small group that would be efficient to facilitate those conversations. So we've started out with a smaller group, but are certainly looking to expand that and get everyone's input as this process goes on. We also convened a group representing vulnerable user organizations, like Nathan mentioned, thinking about the folks who rely on walking and biking in transit. So we spoke to folks from MARTA, we spoke to the principal at North Springs High School, also someone from the North Fulton Government Center, who has firsthand information on how folks access those centers. And we also spoke to first responders and emergency response groups, so Sandy Springs Fire, police, just to get their take on access management and where they see the safety issues, any concerns they might have about the plan, and things like that. But if there's additional interest in that, we can certainly, provide more detail if you'd like to email Caitlin at that email address, and we can provide additional information on that.
All right, great. The next question for the Gresham Smith team is, will the new turn lanes have true turn signals, not just flashing yellow?
I'll take that question. Part of our analysis is looking at this, traffic signal operations. There are, based on the number of vehicles attempting those turns, yes, for safe and efficient operations of those turning movements, we often need to have dedicated green arrow signals in addition to those flashing yellow arrows. So that is a consideration for us. So as we proceed with the analysis and looking into the future of how many vehicles are making those movements, those are definitely part of the analysis and the recommendations.
Okay. Another question about recommendations was, does this project consider things like sidewalk size and spacing from Roswell Road?
Yes, great question. Yes, so as we were talking about, in addition to the motorists who are using the corridor, a focus for this corridor and the ultimate vision for Roswell Road in being that safe boulevard is pedestrian access. Sidewalk width, the separation of the sidewalk from the adjacent lanes, the vegetation strip that goes along the sidewalk, they're all considerations as part of our analysis, and they will be part of the recommendations that we make.
Okay. Another person's asked, is there a space here to request more bike lanes on Roswell Road and its connectors? And I did want to note on the map tool, there is an other option. So if you'd like to use that to kind of catch all for any of the other markers didn't really fit, please let us know just in that other space what you'd like to see. But Nathan, would you like to speak more about bike lanes and how those are factored into this study?
Yeah, we do want to hear from you about those needs, and when you give us that input, note from where to where, where are you currently using Roswell Road as a biking facility. We want to know that. At the end of the day, we are trying to accommodate all users safely within the available space that we have. So we're considering the space that we have, the available right of way along Roswell Road to best accommodate all users. So like I said, in fulfilling and establishing that vision for Roswell Road, we're considering all users. So we want to know that, and recommendations will be made in such a way that we can balance all those needs. But we definitely would want that information from you.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quick. So the biggest issue with doing bicycle infrastructure on the Roswell Road is really the lack of right-of-way in some areas. And so as part of redevelopment, the city has standards that when a parcel redevelops and becomes and has some impacts to the area, they are required to dedicate some right-of-way. And that right-of-way is then used for streetscape improvements, for wider sidewalks, or a bike lane. And so we definitely want to think about how cyclists access Roswell Road, but some of those are more long-term solutions.
Okay, another question. This might be best for you, Caitlin. Somebody asked about the similar public forum that was held about the intersection of Roswell Road and Abernathy. So can you speak to how that input may be incorporated into this study?
Yeah, so that was a separate study that was done last year, and it was a more detailed study, so we'll incorporate the findings and recommendations into this effort as well. And if you have any questions on that project, I'm happy to put you in touch with the project manager.
Okay. I think this kind of echoes what you were saying about right of way, but one person asked, how much latitude does our city have over these issues? Is state involvement, since Roswell Road is a state highway, an obstacle or a partner?
I'll take that one again. So so Georgia Department of Transportation is very involved in this project. They're part of our project management team. So they are a willing partner to see how this plan unravels. Again, I think as we start thinking of implementation down the line, it's definitely going to be project by project, but they definitely understand the safety need really for these kinds of treatments, and we're working together on them.
All right. Nitin or Mega, the one question was about how long will this study be going on for?
The intent for us is to have the plan wrapped up by early fall. So October of 2022 is what we are targeting to have the plan completed.
Okay. Now, someone else asked, how are we engaging commuters from nearby communities? Have we thought to do that?
Yes. So, in addition to all the stakeholder engagement that we're doing, we have, the advertisements of these public meetings, getting the public meeting advertised through several different ways. So we are hoping that today we have gotten a big cross section of people who not only live in Sandy Springs or work or live along Roswell Road, but also use Roswell Road on a daily basis, working in and around the communities. And the project website and the social pinpoint tool, which is the feedback tool that we have developed specifically for the project, that will be online for the next 2 weeks. So, and several efforts will be taken to get this advertised out there, so more and more people can use that, get us that feedback, so we can get that information as we are developing the recommendations.
Okay, great. Someone's asked, how will both the construction and the eventual completion of these 4 solutions affect business access?
Yes, and business access is an important consideration for us. So that's why one of the the early on we have been involving the business communities and in talking to them about how these treatments can well work with their businesses. So for example, when we are considering medians, the location of those median openings has to be strategically placed such that we can still provide reasonable and adequate access for all those businesses to work and be safely accessed. And as I mentioned at the conclusion of this plan, some of these projects will need further design and further considerations, looking for funding to develop those projects. So as it goes into further design, those individual projects will work with individual property owners and making sure that the project that is developed can cater to providing each of those property and property owners and businesses adequate and reasonable access along Roswell Road. So that's a really important consideration for the project owners and the city and all the project partners, including GDOT and the Georgia Department of Transportation.
Okay.
And I'll just add real quick. As part of any construction project or design project that the city undertakes, there is a public involvement piece as well. And so we're talking to you in the way early stages of these things where it's planning. And so, but once it starts becoming a little more realistic and things are we got some funding in place and there actually might be something happening, that's when all the adjacent property owners are notified of the upcoming design or construction project, and they're definitely involved and reached out to. So if this is something that does move forward in the future, then you will definitely be involved, or there'll be some kind of outreach to you directly as the project progresses.
All right. Next question is, will pedestrian and bicyclist education be a part of the project?
That's a great question. I think, like Caitlin mentioned, as at the end of this plan, we plan to complete a document which can guide the future project. So every one of those future projects will have a detailed design that goes with it, and most likely those public involvement meetings that needs to be planned along the design phase and the project development phase of those individual projects. And those public involvement meetings will include how a particular project that's being designed for construction in the future can accommodate all users, include not only motorists, but also pedestrians and bicyclists, and also transit users, which then mean that the specific location and design of crosswalks, sidewalks, and so on and so forth. So as part of the public involvement that goes along with each of those design projects that come in the future for construction, those specific aspects will be included and considered.
Yeah, but there really is not really an education piece to this project per se.
All right. One person asked, if with all the changes to Roswell Road, will you consider the area around the townhomes at Abernathy? And I'll just say that's what tonight is for, is gathering your input on areas that need us to do further research on. So thank you for that comment. Another question was, would this potentially take frontage and parking lot space from existing properties? If yes, will those property owners be compensated?
And as Caitlin mentioned, we are at the planning stages of this effort. So at this point, we're not looking to generate a construction document, which then shows property impacts or right-of-way needs. So that's not the intent of this. We're trying to get to a place where we can have a document that can that can establish the vision for Roswell Road. Detailed projects that get born out of this plan, as they're designed and constructed, they have a structured way of engaging property owners, through the design process. So those are intended as this plan gets implemented into the future at those individual projects timeline.
Yeah, and I'll just add that a lot of this is also going to be probably something that's implemented with redevelopment. So as parcels come in and the property changes, again, they will have to adhere to new streetscape requirements. And so at that point is when they want to redevelop the parcel, we would require a certain amount of right-of-way dedication for some sidewalks. And so I think a good chunk of this will kind of require redevelopment, but there might be some standalone construction projects that happen alongside it, but in a very gradual way.
Okay. Another question, this one might be good for you, Caitlin, is how does this study overlay with the Trails Master Plan, T-SPLOST projects such as sidewalks and traffic light synchronization?
All right, so a lot to unpack there. As we are a very busy city, and so there is a lot of going on. And you named things that were planning stages to actually construction projects. And so this is on the earlier side of things. This is a plan. And so this really builds off of the comprehensive Next 10 small area plan for Roswell Road, where there were recommendations for access management improvements. But there wasn't really any analysis that really said, oh, this should go here, we need this improvement here. And so that's really what we're doing here. We're really taking the next step and thinking about, we know these improvements are needed, but where do they make the most sense? And so and then after we have this plan in place, again, once redevelopment happens, we can reference this and say, oh, the recommendation here suggested this, which is why we're justifying, why there's a justification for what the city is asking for redevelopment. Or it could be, oh, there's this T-SPLOST project coming up, such as the project at Roswell Road and Grogan's Ferry. That one is actually underway, but it has access management components. And so there are ways that we can incorporate access management into upcoming T-SPLOST projects. It won't be as much with sidewalk projects. I think we have a few underway that will complete the sidewalk on Roswell Road. But with whenever there's an opportunity to do these kind of treatments with projects along Roswell Road, we'll definitely look to be able to incorporate both.
Thanks, Caitlin. Okay, so beyond the plan's anticipated completion of October 2022, how long will it take to implement the plan, and how will projects be prioritized?
That's a great question. Once the plan is completed, that will have an implementation plan, where we'll develop some high-level costs and some recommendations of short-term and long-term projects. Some of these at a first step, most of these projects will need to have this dedicated source of funding to be identified. So that itself will take some time, and then each of those individual projects will need to go through a few years of design process, and that's just a normal schedule for developing a robust design that can be then let to construction. Some of these short-term projects could be a few years after October 2022. Some of the long-term, bigger projects could be up to 5 years or more than that for construction. And like Caitlin said, a lot of this is intended to be a gradual process, and opportunistically done along with redevelopment that comes in place. So some of them you might see immediately, and you might also see some of the projects that are already planned and programmed along Roswell Road, using some of these same techniques, access management techniques as part of those. So you'll see some of them immediately, but then a lot of the projects that we are going to be identifying will take that several years of design, for funding, acquisition, design, and construction to get to that end point of realizing the vision for this corridor.
Okay. So the next question is, if you put in a median and you can no longer turn left, have you considered U-turns that are allowed at adjacent traffic lights?
That is a great question. I'm glad you asked, and this probably helps a lot of other folks on this call. Yes. So if we do decide that a particular location needs a median, that automatically means yes, some of those left turns, which are currently being made at that location today, cannot be made in the future. Therefore, needs to be accommodated some other way. So that could be one of the ways to accommodate them. Would be allowing U-turns at the next intersection. Could be a signalized intersection, and making sure that intersection is improved in such a way that they can accommodate those U-turns, which now move from one location to a downstream location. So yes, the answer is yes, absolutely. That is part of the analysis as we develop our recommendations.
Okay, great. So one person asked, how can we address the safety concerns more immediately without waiting for redevelopment to happen in these locations? They noted that many areas aren't likely to be redeveloped anytime soon.
So there are a lot of projects that are already being planned along Roswell Road. I think some of you mentioned the Abernathy. There's already a construction project going on at Glen Ridge and Grogan's Ferry. So you do see it's an incremental process. And I'm also going to let Caitlin answer that question as we tag team these.
Yeah, and I'd say there's hopefully, fingers crossed, there's some low-hanging fruit, or there is an immediate need where there's something that needs to be addressed. The thing about the plan is that there's no funding associated with the recommendations at this point, and so that's why we're saying it's a planning effort, and a lot of it's dependent on redevelopment, because even if the city wanted to prioritize it, we wouldn't have all the money we need to do the entire corridor in the next couple of years. And so I think the other nice thing about having GDOT on board is that this is a GDOT corridor. And if there is an immediate pressing need, we can work with GDOT to try to do some of the smaller fixes. And so during the implementation planning process, once we get to the end of the planning process, we'll be able to decide which projects kind of fit which category. If they are some low-hanging fruit that are a little less expensive, then we can prioritize those and see if we can work with GDOT to get those addressed. Anything longer term or more expensive, we'll need to find larger funding for.
Thanks, Caitlin. Just want to read another comment that came through on the Q&A. Someone said, please don't make Roswell Road and 285 anything like Ashford Dunwoody at 285 near Perimeter Mall. So thanks for that comment. Other than that, I haven't seen any other questions coming through. So we'll give you a few more moments here to get your questions in. Now's your opportunity to speak with the planning team. So please fire away with questions.
And if you don't have any immediate questions now, do feel free to reach out to that Safe Roswell Road at sandyspringsga.gov web address. I monitor that daily, and so if something comes to you later or you're having some issues with the social pinpoint tool, don't hesitate to reach out. I am looking at that. I will respond. And so do we have any more questions?
No, I think, oh, sorry, one more has come in. So somebody asked, will we be able to comment on the lower Sandy Springs corridor as well on the public access online map? So the areas noted in red on the map are where we're collecting comments. So we're only mainly looking at the Roswell Road corridor, as well as those few corridors on the north end. So I hope that answers your question. With that, I think people are starting to log off. We've seen a few people saying thanks for all of the information. So we thank all of you for coming out and being a part of this meeting. All of your input is greatly appreciated and will help inform the study.
Thanks, Ansley. Yeah, I think we can close up the Q&A. Again, thank you all for doing the virtual meeting. I know we always prefer to have in person, but I'm glad that we're able to have this meeting today. If you have any questions or would you like more information on anything, again, don't hesitate to reach out. You now know the whole project team, so just thank you so much for your time and have a good night.